Let's talk about a real head-scratcher happening in the Indian state of Meghalaya. Billions have been poured into its education system, but what's hiding behind all that spending? Well, it's a pretty shocking failure, and we're going to break it down. So let's just dive right into the heart of this mystery with one single staggering number. 124. What's so special about 124? Well, in 2024, that's how many schools in Meghalaya had something pretty awful in common.
Yup, in all 124 of those schools, not a single student passed their board exams. And get this, for 36 of them, this was the third year in a row with a 0% pass rate. I mean, just think about that. 3 years and not one student made it through.
So that's the big question, right? With all this money being thrown at the problem, how is this even possible? That's what we're going to dig into. And our guide for this is a critical look at the state's very own official 2025 Education Commission report.
To really get our heads around this, we first have to look at the official story. You know, the government side of things. Where did all that money go? This leads us straight into what some critics are calling the input accounting trap.
Okay, so this official report, it's a beast. We're talking over 2,000 pages long. And it's just packed with lists of all the stuff they've done, all the inputs. Thousands of new classrooms, huge budgets for teacher training, new curriculum rollouts, you name it. The whole focus is on what's being poured into the system.
And that right there brings us to the absolute core of the problem. It's something that you see in education policy all over India, really. A complete and total disconnect between all those impressive-sounding inputs and the actual outputs, what students are actually learning.
And here's where it gets really stark. Look at this. Despite all that investment, the results are, well, they're a disaster. Only 15.6% of third graders can read at a basic second grade level. Billions spent for that. That is the disconnect, right there in black and white.
All right, so if pouring money and resources into the system isn't working, what's actually going on? Or, maybe more importantly, what's not going on inside the classroom? This is the stuff the official report seems to just completely miss.
Okay, so in a perfect world, right? The plan is for students to get 100% of their learning time. That's the official story.
But, as you can probably guess, reality is a little different. For starters, research shows that on any given day, about a quarter of all teachers are just absent. So boom, right off the bat, you've lost 25% of your instructional time. We're down to 75% before a single class has even started.
But hold on, it gets so much worse. Of the teachers who are there, who actually show up to work, studies find that only about a quarter of them are actively teaching. So when you do the math on that, the actual effective learning time just plummets to a catastrophic 19%. Think about that. A whole school year boils down to barely 2 months of real teaching.
And on top of all that, the system is sending completely mixed signals. It's training teachers to use these modern, interactive, student-focused methods, but then it turns around and forces them to teach to an exam that's all about high-stakes, rote memorization. So teachers are basically trapped, caught between two totally contradictory demands.
So, if the real problems are teachers not showing up and a totally broken classroom dynamic, what are the big, game-changing solutions proposed in that massive 2,000-page report?
Well, the report spends a lot of time on administrative fixes. The big one is school consolidation, basically merging smaller schools into bigger ones. But critics are just shaking their heads, saying this completely, utterly misses the point. Shuffling schools around is just rearranging the deck chairs, right? It does absolutely nothing to fix what's actually happening, or not happening, inside the four walls of the classroom.
And a critique to the report puts it perfectly. It says the state's strategy is like rearranging furniture while the house burns. It's a lot of activity, it looks like you're being productive, but it does nothing to stop the actual crisis.
Which brings us back to the one thing that should be the absolute non-negotiable goal of any education system.
You know, there's that old saying in management, what gets measured gets done. Well, in Meghalaya's elementary schools, they have 114 different official indicators to measure quality. But here's the kicker. Out of all 114, only 2 of them actually measure whether or not students are learning anything.
And that's the final takeaway, and it is, well, it's pretty damning. The entire system is meticulously designed to track administrative stuff, where teachers are, how money is spent, if policies are rolled out. But the actual outcome, the entire reason the system exists, learning, is treated like it barely even matters.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to think about.
If a system measures everything except for learning, can we really even call it an education system at all?